Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 2024 AAC meeting. I want to thank you all for coming and giving your time to this. We have a couple of things I'm going to let Jenny take over. We have a couple new members. So Dr. Coletta Parsley from UPike and Dr. Jennifer Neal from Lindsay Wilson College. We're so thankful that you were able to join us. And then I've said this a few times, but I'm going to say it again. Dr. Jennifer Bay Williams, we're so thankful that you have agreed to be chair for our committee this year. We appreciate you. And and then, of course, there are other members that have been more longer standing, but come to every meeting. We just so appreciate you. And then I wanted to just give a couple minutes we have Dr. Meredith Brewer on today. She is our new associate commissioner. So I just wanted her to be able to say hi, introduce herself. So I'll mute myself.
Morning, everyone. Very excited to be here for my first AAC meeting. I see a few familiar faces, but I'm excited to get to work with all of you. Very excited to be back in educator licensure and effectiveness. When I first came to the department, I worked in the Division of Educator Recruitment and Development as the director there, helping to launch Go Teach KY. Then left to go serve as the Director of Education Policy and work with our State Board of Education. But I'm very happy to return to all things educator workforce. So excited to learn from all of you today, and don't ever hesitate to reach out if there's something I can do to help you.
Right, thank you. And we'll just jump right into our agenda, and I'll hand the meeting over to Dr. Bay Williams.
Yes, good to see you, Meredith. I'm so happy you're in this new role. I look forward to working with you and to with this committee. So this is my first time to chair, so I'm asking Melissa publicly to just jump in if I miss any steps or I'm not following protocol. And so our first item of business is, we've done the welcome, is approval of the minutes from June 26th. And they are in our folder. And Melissa, I don't know if you want to put this in the chat or.
Yes, I can add that for you.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Let's see. Sorry, I was looking at the minutes. Who said that? That was Danny. Okay, yes. Danny has made a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
Second, Kesey.
Sue Kesey has seconded, and we will do a vote. If your camera is on, you can hold your hand up. If your camera is off, you can do the emoji for thumbs up. Looking around for our voters. Melissa, do we have our voters? Opposed? Okay, the minutes stand approved as written. And do I sound official?
You do. You're doing fabulous.
I haven't been the person leading a meeting in a while. It just sort of comes back to you like riding a bike, I guess. All right. So the next thing on the agenda is to actually set the date for our June 2025 meeting. So I'll give you a second to pull up your calendars.
And that one, we will be voting on a couple of institutions, program approvals. So we want to make sure that we can have, anytime we're doing a big vote, we got to make sure everybody can be there.
Are we hoping to block out 2 hours, 3 hours? What's your best guess?
Yeah, I think 2 hours is probably fine because we will have, Brescia will come to do another update. You guys are going to have an update every meeting. And then we'll just do 2 program approvals. We have to vote for Lindsay Wilson College and Eastern Kentucky University for their program approvals.
Right, so I'm going to pitch, I'm just trying to think of the best way to do this publicly, but I'm just going to pitch a day to start just to see how we land. What about June 9th? I'm going to open up the chat.
Well, actually, the chat's disabled, it looks like, so.
Oh, so there we go.
Well, yep. So we'll just chat out loud. Does June 9th work for everybody?
Yes.
All right.
Any opposed?
And is this time a good time? 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 Central.
If we could bump it to 10, it would be ideal for me.
10 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central.
Yes, please.
If you are unable to attend at that time, please speak now. All right, if Melissa, you would please send a calendar invite out to hold that date. Wow, we're just ticking right through our agenda.
I know we're going quickly.
It's now lost
Although
behind my calendar.
Ashley is not here quite yet.
Oh, because
So
we're 23 minutes
to-
ahead of schedule.
to do her update. Yep, that's okay. She is going to sign on at 9:15. So she
9:15.
should be here shortly. Any questions or anything as people were reviewing things? And I know we have some new members. Any questions about the update or?
So could you remind us, Melissa, of the expectation that was given to them in terms of, I know by this meeting, they were to show progress towards, but we're not actually voting on their situation today. Could you just remind us of our purpose as we're listening?
Yes, we are. Let me pull up. I'm gonna pull up really quick and read what the conditions were just to make sure we can clarify that. So there we go. So Brescia University at the last meeting was put on accreditation with probation. They had 11 AFIs and 7 stipulations, and then there were 2 unmet standards, standards 4 and 5. And so program approval was approved with conditions, and the conditions that were set forth were that the EPP will submit a written report to the AAC detailing progress made on standards 1 and 2 through the Google Drive, which they provided at the set date and time. So 3 weeks prior, they got that to me. And the EPP may also choose to share progress towards standards 3 through 5 in the written report if they want to. The AAC will provide the EPP with the opportunity to attend the scheduled meetings to answer questions from the committee to clarify information in the written report should the need arise. And so we did ask Ashley to basically, she's going to do a quick overview of the progress they've made on their standards 1 and 2 AFIs. Those were all AFIs. And then she can answer any additional questions or kind of where they see themselves moving in the next 6 months. They will provide another update for you all in June as to their continued progress. And then they'll have another one next December. Following next December, we will actually conduct a targeted on-site visit where we look at standards 4 and 5 specifically. So those are the 2 that they'll have to get them in compliance for meeting the standard for 4 and 5 in order to move forward with accreditation. So, but because of the conditions were tied to program review, that's why we did standards 1 and 2 in the conditions for program review. And then EPSB has also asked for a summary of what we heard here. So we'll provide that summary in February to EPSB. Does that clarify anything? Is there anything I can answer for any of you or no? Okay. Yeah, Ashley should be here soon. And then, so I've just told her that she could do a quick presentation of what was in the written report from her perspective. So if there's anything in the last 3 weeks that they collected or, anything additional that's happened in the last 3 weeks since she submitted her report, she could, provide those. It's been 3 weeks, so it may not be a lot that they've collected since then, but it is the end of the semester. So there may be some things there. but she can provide that update and then really answer any questions that any of you have concerning standards 1 and 2. And then, 3, 4, and 5, it was optional. But I think if you had a question, you could ask it. She just may not be prepared with the answer because those were optional ones. But if you had additional questions, I'm sure you could ask them. Does that make sense? Perfect.
I mean, one of my questions is I was reading the report and looking back at the original submission, and the condition was, the reporting on progress made. So trying to tease out, because they're very, brief statements, what is the progress made? Because some of it is synthesizing or just summarizing what was submitted in the summer. So I don't know if before she starts speaking, we want to help her to point out the progress that's been made since June towards the stipulations and AFIs, so that we can tease out what was already in place and what has happened since. Like that was hard for me to compare, and I don't know about the rest of the committee. How you felt about that. I see Jennifer at
ask
least
her to
nodding her head.
differentiate.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is something that we need clarity on, especially like in the written report, if there's something that you feel would have been helpful, we can let her know for the June report as well. Maybe, now we have this summary of what's, happened. So in June, we really just need the progress.
Any other comments or thoughts? Well, I think we can mute and just pull up the content that we have reviewed, so we have it in front of us, and we'll just pause for a few minutes until she joins us. What do you think, Melissa?
Yeah, that sounds good. If you guys want to review that stuff and look it over, I will admit her when she comes in, and we'll go through all the introductions and
summon us
stuff.
back.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead and look things over, and I will await. So, okay, well then we will welcome you in. We've got the committee here, and Dr. Jennifer Bay Williams is the new chair because Dr. Faye Dieter's retired, and so she has taken over. So I'll let her take it away with this group.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us. As we were discussing before you got here, we're looking forward to hearing from you and what we want to, as you're sharing with us, providing your input, we're hoping to hear mostly about your charge to make progress. So as you're speaking about things, help us to remember what was in place in June and what you've done since June, the work that's been done. So that's what we're listening for. As you're thinking about these things. For example, the lesson plan was in place before and the lesson plan's in place now. So it'll help us to understand what progress you've made in aligning the lesson plan to INTAS standards or that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, we are ready to listen to your insights, your progress.
Perfect. All right. Let me do some maneuvering here. So, I may need a refresher. I know we have a new chair. Is this a new team or is it just a new chair, Melissa?
We do have some new members. Let's real quick.
Yes, let's do introductions.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Let's do introductions. It's hard to remember every time we get a new person. So Jenny, I'll let you call on people.
Yeah, if you unshare, then we can see each other better. There
Perfect.
we go.
Perfect.
All right. So I'm Jennifer Bay Williams. I'm currently chairing the committee, and I'm at the University of Louisville. And I'm just going to call out another person's name so we can go more succinctly. So I'll go to Danny.
I'm Danny Bradley. I'm the lay member on the committee.
And Kimberly, are you joining us? She might be listening in. She's what would you say, ex officio to the committee, Melissa?
Oh, she just helps me. She's my helper.
Okay. I'm just going, I'm an inclusive person. I'm just going person by person. Coletta.
Yes, I'm Coletta Parsley. I'm the Director of Teacher Education at the University of Pikeville.
And Sharon.
So I am Sharon Salzman here with KDE in the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness.
And Meredith, I see you popped on camera. I'll go to you.
Hi, I'm Meredith Brewer. I'm the Associate Commissioner in the Office of Educator Licensure and Effectiveness.
And Todd.
Good morning. I'm Todd Davis, the Director of Educator Preparation and Certification Division in OELE.
Beth.
Oh, Beth is our tech person, so she might be jumping in and out. So we'll skip.
Gotcha. Jennifer.
I'm Jennifer Neal. I'm the Director of Education at Lindsey Wilson College.
And Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Kesey, the Director of the School of Teacher Education at Western Kentucky University.
Did I miss anybody besides Melissa? But I think we all know Melissa. Okay, Ashley, back to you.
Perfect. Okay, so I wasn't exactly who I would be meeting again and who would be new to our team. So first I have to start off with go Tops, right? I'm an alum of Western, so I always joke that even though I am a Bearcat now, Western is what got me to this point. So I still pay homage to my alma mater there. So let me go back and share. Oh, sorry, you're seeing my cow. That's my son's cow. Oh, maybe. There we go. I know it seems like everything we have is a little bit different and works a little bit differently. So I had to reacquaint myself with Google everything. Going through any of this process. So just bear with me. Just to give, I don't know exactly where you all are as far as what you know about Brescia. So just to give you a very quick background about Brescia, we're actually getting ready to celebrate 100 years, which is phenomenal. It started out in 1925 as Mount St. Joseph Junior College for Women. We were founded by a group of Ursuline women who traveled down the Ohio River from Louisville. We then moved from Mount St. Joseph, which is probably a good 20-30 miles from here, in 1946, and began offering just a few classes in downtown Owensboro. And then in 1950, Brescia College was actually established where we're at today. And in 1998, we moved from Brescia College to Brescia University. So the top picture, just to give you a background, is an older picture from Mount St. Joseph. And then the bottom picture is a new picture of the Retreat Center out at the Mount. That's where a lot of our Ursuline sisters who also work here at Brescia or have worked here at Brescia now reside. Brescia itself, these are just a couple of pictures. The first picture is of our what we call the quad. And then the bottom picture is the roaded side on Frederica. So we have right around 900 total enrollment. That's our online programs and our on-ground programs. We represent about 43 states currently, 21 countries, cover about 30 majors, and we are comprised of about 6 divisions or schools. We're actually going through some restructuring, so that number probably will change within the next academic year as well. So will the majors. One of the exciting things about Brescia is we will be offering a PA program. It's going through their approval process, so we will start admitting and accepting applications next fall for a start cohort of fall of 2026. So that's not necessarily a School of Ed thing, but it is a Brescia item that we are expanding. As far as the School of Education, we're housed in the Field Center for Professional Studies. That is a picture of our building. We're one of the newer buildings here on campus. And we house about 60 to 70 current education majors. So again, that's not necessarily all that have been admitted into our programs, but it is about how many education majors we have. So some changes that we've made since our April 2024 visit. And I know that you mentioned since the June meeting, but there are some things that started in April after our visit and kind of progressed. And I reported on in June, but then there's some follow-up that needs to be shared. So as a university itself, we've made some changes. So the university itself has moved from a 140 to a 120 credit hour minimum to graduate from Russia. That's had a huge impact on our School of Education. And that is in combination with revising our general education program. It has taken on a major overhaul. The whole structure is completely different from what it has been for probably 20 plus years. And I'm sure you all are well aware that taking on a GER program and doing some overhaul on that can impact every single program that you have on campus, especially one where you are having to move and change the number of credit hours so that you stay in the market, if you will, to look appealing to students, but also making sure that the students are getting exactly what they need. So when they walk out of our doors and walk across that stage, they're ready to walk into a classroom fully prepared to educate our P12 population. Our new program, again, will actually begin in fall of 2025. Of course, our students will have the option to stay in the catalog that they came in on, or they may move to the new one. And I'll share a little bit about what that impact has directly to our programs. And then we actually have a major announcement coming probably, I think the press release is set for tomorrow, so I can't officially share, but just know that there is some big changes happening here at Brescia. The Board of Trustees actually voted yesterday afternoon, and the press release is actually set for tomorrow, I believe, is the date that we were shared with, or that was shared with us at the Board of Trustees yesterday. So major announcement coming from Brescia University this week. So changes inside of the School of Education. We have updated our memorandum of agreement, and it was actually, and again, feel free to interject with questions or clarifications on your all's end of it. Our memorandum of agreement wasn't necessarily a full memorandum of agreement. It was more of a letter that gave a very vague outline of expectations and not expectations for all of the constituents involved. But that memorandum of agreement has been updated. It actually started in April. It's one of those things that just took some time for us to get together as it was reviewed by our vice president of business, which is our connection to our attorney here at Brescia. I always, every time I say that, and it may work like this at other institutions, but it's like, why would the VP of Finance need to see our MOAs? But he did, because he is the one that works with our attorney. It was also approved by our academic dean. So it took a little bit of time, and we had to do some revisions to it before we were able to send it out to our partnering districts. That did go out this year. They have been returned, and the document clearly states the expectations for everyone who is involved. Another thing that we started working on back in April, again, takes time, was our partnership with Watermark. This is our online data collection system, if you will, but it's also a way for students to build portfolios. It started back in April simply because we had to request funding. And if anyone is using Watermark, it was also at one point called TaskStream. I think LiveText also goes through them, but we're using their student learning and licensure program. And that actually comes with some training that Watermark does with us. We started our trainings in August. So we started our weekly meetings and then started the actual training into the program in September. Sister Betsy and I. Sister Betsy is our office manager. She also works with our field placement. She's our field placement coordinator. We complete those trainings weekly. So what Watermark is going to do for us is help us with data collection. And that was one of the bigger concerns that we had, is that we could have all kinds of data, but it was hard for us to collect it and to really narrow down or aggregate and deaggregate any of that data. So Watermark is going to actually help us as well. Again, another one of the concerns in our report was our ability to track candidate through different gateways. We're able to do that. Those of you that are at small institutions, when you have just a handful of graduates each year, you get to know those graduates very well, and through advising. And when you only have 3 faculty members, it's very easy. It's not always what we should do, but it is very easy just to step over into an office and have a conversation. This is also going to help us track those gateways so that we can have concrete data and pathways or gateways and data points. It will also help students with building their portfolio, and it will allow for better collaboration with all the constituents that are involved. So it will be able to collect evaluation data from our cooperating teachers, from our administration, from our university supervisors, and even from our students, so that we have everyone's input and we will be able to use that to make better decisions for our programs. We also have scheduled some data days. We're going to do these at the end of each semester simply because of the way that we offer our courses. Our courses are only offered once an academic year. And waiting until a semester later, especially for this fall semester, didn't make much sense to us. We want to look at it while that data is still fresh. That way we can make some even minor changes, even if it's down to the way that we communicate with our cooperating teachers or with our students, or providing that feedback sooner. To all of our constituents, we're going to actually have a data day. It's scheduled for tomorrow. So we just had finals, so we're able to get our grades in, or they're actually due today. So we'll have that data point as well. Collaboration with content faculty. We have that planned and scheduled for 2025. Right now, our content faculty teach the majority of our Gen Ed courses, and with that revision of our Gen Ed courses, they have to actually reapply for their courses to be offered as a Gen Ed option. So they are really focusing on that as well. We're also using that opportunity to look at how we will be able to offer some of our courses as Gen Ed courses, so that we can make sure we're staying closer to that 120 minimum credit hour. Another thing that we have been working on are our evaluations. We found that we collected a lot of data and didn't know what to do with it, or just had a lot of data. I mean, I feel like we had data for days, but we have narrowed it down to 3 key evaluations for our programs. We're going to use the same tool for our observations. So we actually go out and see our students when they're in methods courses, actually teaching students, not necessarily a peer teaching opportunity, but they're actually teaching and working with students in our P12 classrooms. We have a common rubric also for an evaluation for our lesson plans, and I'll come back to lesson plans since you brought up, used it before, and now we still have that as well. And then our portfolio. And what's really changed about our lesson plan is that we're using the same lesson plan. We are also tracking the progress over time. So as we put data into Watermark, our students are going to be able to see that when they first did a lesson plan, that they maybe didn't score in the developing section. It was more of the beginning section. And it'll take some time for our students to adjust that it really is about that growth over time. All three of these evaluations are actually aligned with our Kentucky Framework for Teaching. So the Danielson Framework, we try to use that term as well, since that's a term that our students will be seeing and hearing whenever they enter the profession. It's also cross-reference with our KTPS, AQUIP, and I'll talk about AQUIP in just a little bit. Our dispositions here at the School of Education and the 4 C's, the collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. I always forget that one, ironically. And then collaboration with our P12, our community partners. I try to leave out the P12 part just as an overarching, because we do have partnerships with community partners, especially with our special ed program. The very first class that our special ed majors take is they actually go out into the community and see some of the services that our students might be able, and our families of our students might be able to interact with. So I'm trying to change the way that I say it as well. One thing that we have done is we have piloted this semester, is our first semester doing this. The interview for our application to clinical practice, we also include a P12 interviewer. This semester, it was actually a recently, as of May, or actually probably, yes, May, retired principal, and it was actually set up like a site-based interview instead of the students just presenting. We still use the same rubric that we used. We still based our questions. We had written questions so that we were able to cover our dispositions, the 4 C's, their philosophy, to give them the same opportunity, but also to give them the opportunity to be interviewed by someone who is not the 3 faculty members that they're used to. Again, small community, that's what happens when there's 3 of us. They get to know all of us. We also have a recommendation that is now required from their practicum cooperating teacher, which is something new that we did this semester. We actually had, for the first time, we had one person who was not recommended for student teaching from their practicum teacher through this recommendation. So it was interesting to see and to have that conversation and how that plays an impact or in a role in how our students are accepted into their student teaching. Some of the other things that we have been working on are identifying feedback evaluations and or surveys. So this semester will be surveying our completers and our P12 partners, as well as our cooperating teachers. Our cooperating teachers we're going to focus on our clinical practice cooperating teachers, not just the ones who are hosting our students' farm methods courses, but also those who are hosting our practicum teachers as well. Our students are now asked to do a leadership project or a service project. We asked them to work with their practicum teacher. Some of the feedback that we've already gotten is for us to take into consideration the amount of work that it puts on the practicum teacher as far as staying later or having access to different materials, and how we can help our students think kind of outside of the box so that it's not additional work on our cooperating teachers as well. So that's just a little bit of feedback that we've gotten so far. One of the tasks that we ended our visit with in April was to connect and combine 3 of our fine arts courses into one that is aligned with the National Course Art Standards. And we actually are teaching that course as a combined course this fall for the first time. So right now, I don't have any feedback on that course. As far as student feedback, I've had a very brief conversation, nothing official or written in any minutes, with the person who taught that course. Since it just ended and he hasn't even submitted his grades yet, so that's due today again. On how that went And he actually said that he enjoys teaching that from different perspectives. We have also discontinued our ESL endorsement due to lack of interest. That was actually not at the graduate level. It is considered an advanced endorsement for us, but it's not offered at the 500 level, so it wasn't as attractive to people who are maybe coming back to work on an endorsement. Some of the things to help with professional development, the School of Ed faculty has increased their involvement with state task force. I know that Renee, who is, I call her our literacy guru, she just loves anything and everything literacy. She's been working with Melissa on the literacy regulation, and I hope I'm saying that correctly, Melissa. I have had the opportunity to start exploring seeking national accreditation with AQUIP. So I have met with one of their consultants. I have also had the opportunity over the summer to serve on a site team, which was very informative. And we have not necessarily entered an agreement, but GREC has opened some PD opportunities for our faculty members, our School of Ed faculty members, but also for our students, free of cost or at a low cost, if you will, if there is a cost. We actually took a group of our practicum students from fall down for a classroom management professional development. And then we will also be going for a 2-day event for the Kagan strategies in the spring. So we appreciate that partnership. As you know, sometimes professional development is a little bit more of a challenge in higher ed to make sure that we are staying up to date with the most recent strategies that our classroom teachers are using. Additional tasks that we have in progress are, there we go. Maybe if I move, oh, sorry. I'm in the process. It is budgeting time for us, as it probably is for many schools. So I am requesting funding to seek national accreditation. So that is a work in progress. And to seek funding for additional support staff. Right now, we are a faculty of 3 full-time faculty members, 1 part-time staff member, and then we also utilize adjuncts. Our adjuncts are current practitioners. I think I have said, not necessarily to this group, but that's one of the things I think we can pride ourselves on is that we use current practitioners. The 3 full-time faculty members on staff in the School of Ed all have been practitioners. So we have practiced the crafts that we try to teach. Even our support staff has worked in education as an educator and as a building administrator. But I would really like to see that part-time position become a full-time position. So we are asking for funding for that. We are also in the slow process because it's not just up to us. We have to, of course, be approved through our curriculum committee, but also our TAC group to align, realign, revise. Again, our Gen Ed program looks completely different than it has looked before. We actually are no longer doing the categories like our language and literature or our fine arts. It is more aligned with goals or objectives for our Gen Eds, and we have to apply, every course has to apply to be considered, to be up for consideration for a Gen Ed class. We are trying to be very proactive and an advocate for education students so that some of our courses and some of the courses in our content area that are required are also able to be counted for those gen ed. So we are looking at every one of our education programs to see how we can assist our students so that it makes sense, again, so that they're not required to take 150 credit hours, which sometimes that's what it feels like, and that they're closer to that 120, but still making sure they get all of the content and the pedagogy that they need to be able to be successful. Another thing that we are trying to do is, you all are probably in the same boat as we. It's expensive to be an education major. We are looking at how we can offer online resources for our students so that we can eliminate those $150 textbooks, so that it's not as much of a barrier for their background checks or their state testing licensure requirements, and even down to being able to go out into the field and maybe not having to work as much to be able to cover those costs. I know that there are some things that are put in place where they can get reimbursed for things, but we are also looking at long term. I think it's like everything else. We don't know how long those funds will be there. So we're trying to be proactive as well. Along those lines, it's caused or made us more alert to what resources are out there. So we've used actually several resources from KDE with the core standards site, which we truly appreciate. I don't get lost in the mix anymore since they pulled that site out. And then we're seeking feedback on evaluation tools from our partners and our TI group. So just like I shared before, we're using the Kentucky Framework for Teaching, more aligned with that than what we had before, so that it's something that our graduates are familiar with whenever they enter the field. But again, we want to make sure that it's something that we have that feedback from our partners in our TI group as well. So questions, I will put up our contact information. That'll give you a little bit of a background as far as who is responsible for what. I am the chair of the School of Education. I also teach in many of the classes. I coordinate the secondary, which are all of our content areas. And that's another thing that we've had to do is identify a better way to categorize how we report. Due to our low numbers, if we single out each one of our content areas for secondary or for middle school, then we do not have that 10 plus to be able to do good reporting. Same way with our P12 art. If you read any of our reports, it probably referred to P12 art and Spanish. Spanish was discontinued about a year ago. Spanish was discontinued. Our Spanish major here at Russia was discontinued as well. Renee Fulkerson, our literacy guru, is our elementary program coordinator. Mr. Mac Webb coordinates our middle school and special education. So special education is our dual cert program, so they can partner that with one subject middle school or with elementary. But he takes care of the special ed as well. And Sister Betsy Moyer is our office manager. She has a very long title. She also coordinates our field experience, and she's the coordinator for our curriculum resource center. So we all wear multiple hats. We tend to advise the students that we're the program coordinator for, but Renee and Mac both are somewhat new. Mac is newer to the team than Renee is. So I still have some of the elementary and middle school majors as advisees, but they're getting ready to graduate. So we try to make sure that we have the right advisees, but we're still working through some of that transition as well. Any questions? I feel like that was a lot.
So committee, this is our opportunity to ask questions about her presentation. We can start there, and then we can also ask questions about the report that was submitted. So I'm opening up the floor for questions related to things that Ashley highlighted in the report or in her presentation just now.
Ashley, I was wondering, with your contract with Watermark, it sounds like you haven't started data collection yet with them, or have you?
No, we have not. That is a very long and there's a lot of steps to that process for Watermark. So a little bit of the backstory is we used TaskStream whenever I first came on board about 10 years ago, 9 to 10 years ago. And it was, for lack of better terms, it was a hot mess. It didn't do what we needed it to do, or we didn't know how to use it. We were not trained in that. So we moved away from that and we tried some other options for us to collect data, and it just wasn't doing what we needed to. So we actually went to Watermark, talked with them, and they of course gave us their sales pitch. So we had to seek funding. There is, an official contract, and they set up basically like a calendar of how we want to roll this out. And they are very thorough on all of their trainings, how to set up the program, how to use the program for students, for faculty, for the system administrator, which would be Sister Betsy and myself. And then in the spring, we will have students start putting data in. At the same time that we're going through all of these trainings, this also gave us an opportunity to make sure what evaluation tools we wanted to use, simply because we had several evaluations, but not necessarily ones that maybe aligned with what we were trying to evaluate anymore. So we were able as a team to look at our evaluation tools and get the right tools prepared so that we can put them into Watermark and use those for data collection. So we have a small pilot group of 2 students, so small, that are helping us work through what it looks like from the student side, what it might look like from the cooperating teacher side, so that we can set it up and it can run with a little bit more ease when we add more students to it in the spring. But we will be using Watermark as a data collection tool in the spring with our new evaluation tools.
So that would be considered like your first cycle of data you're going to count for spring. Okay.
Yes. Because right now, some of our evaluation tools, we're still using the old and the new to try to get feedback from our students and our cooperating teachers. Because I think, like everything in education, it sounds really good in our heads, but when we put something into practice, it's, we've seen it with some of our recommendation forms way from the past with our content faculty of, we've never seen this person teach. Why would we see this person teach when they're taking, a U.S. History 1 class as a sophomore? So how can we make that recommendation? So again, sometimes it sounds and looks really good in what we think, but we want to know what it looks like in practice.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say that data was entered by the students in Watermark?
They will be submitting some of their data. So our students do self-evaluations. They will be able to input that into Watermark themselves. Watermark will be set up to where we put in the evaluation that like the cooperating teacher will do. Then Watermark sends them a link, and then they can go in and complete their evaluation there as well. They will also submit what we used to call our signature assignments. They're just going to be assignments for us now. They will submit those, and our university faculty members will be able to evaluate inside of Watermark. And this may not mean anything for this crew, but our LMS is Moodle. So one of the other barriers that we had was when students would submit things in Moodle, which is what our university uses, and then they would submit them in Watermark or in TaskStream back then. Sometimes they wouldn't submit them in TaskStream. So we just wouldn't have that information. Or if they submitted them in both, sometimes faculty would forget, or our adjuncts would forget to go in and evaluate in both places. What Watermark will allow us to do is connect the two. So they can submit it in Watermark. They don't have to submit it in Moodle. They submit it in Watermark. Our faculty member goes in and grades it in Watermark. They can grade it with a numerical grade, but then they can also grade it with a rubric that gives us the data that we need. And then it communicates to Moodle. So students can see it in both places, but they submit it in one place and we grade it or evaluate it in one place. So kind of 3 different things there. We get more accurate data. They only have to grade it once, so they're not looking at the same document twice. And maybe it's not equivalent when they grade it versus when I grade first thing in the morning or when I grade late at night. But also with our students turning it in both places, that's eliminated, turn it in once, and then faculty members scoring the rubric or the assessment. So those were all 3 things. It was like, okay, I have 20 students, but only 15 of them turned it in. And then of the 15, only 12 were scored in both places. So hopefully this will help eliminate that. I hope that answers that question.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a whole can of worms.
So although you're not using Watermark, how have you collected student or program data during this fall semester?
We have old schooled it. We have put things in Excel sheets, and I have learned how to operate a pivot table. And if you have not, I invite you to watch some YouTube videos on how to operate a pivot table.
So have you used any of your revised evaluation tools this semester?
Yes, with 2 of our students, but we've not analyzed any of that data. That's our data day is tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I have several questions around those data tools, but let me start with, in the presentation, you said we're really trying to focus in on 3 things: the lesson plan, the observation, and a portfolio. Did I get the list right?
Yes.
Because I didn't write it down. Okay, yes. So those 3 things. So, but the portfolio literally can be one thing on a slide, but can still be 20 different assessments in there. And it could be that what you're calling the portfolio is what data is being gathered in your portfolio system that you're adopting. So could you say more about that portfolio? Because there's nothing in it, there isn't any link to your portfolio components or that. And I think this is a great opportunity to think about the standards that are talking about, how are you tracking student progress over time? Because a portfolio can, track their progress in an early course, a middle course, a later course. Can you say more about it? And it might not be, it's probably a work in progress with all these other changes you've talked about at the university. That's fine. But how are you thinking about that portfolio?
So we are actually looking to revise what our portfolio looks like. So up until this point, what we refer to as a portfolio for students is they had to have their philosophy, they had to have a resume, and then they had to have 2 pieces of evidence with rationale for each of the 10 consecutive teacher performance standards. Since we are moving towards the Kentucky framework for teachers, we are wanting that portfolio to look a little bit different. We are wanting them to actually work through the domains as they align with the Kentucky teacher performance standards. So it's not just the 10 standards, all 10 standards will be covered, but we really want them to look at each of the 4 domains and build a portfolio in that fashion. And what Watermark will help us do, so let me back up. So the evaluation part of our portfolio will definitely change because we will use our framework as the evaluation tool itself. So for right now, we just use the 10 teacher performance standards as our rubric, if you will, for what portfolio they did. So the rubric changes, the portfolio, the look of the portfolio, or the outline of the portfolio changes, but Watermark will also allow them to pull portfolio pieces from what they submit on Watermark so that we can look at progress over time. So even I will have access to build gateways, if you will. And our goal is to identify in each gateway what data points we want to pull. So if we're going to use, if we're looking at the lesson plan and growth over time, we would pull that in the first gateway, which would not be the first gateway. They don't take an ed class until their second gateway. So we would pull that lesson plan from either our intro to ed class or our teaching strategies class. So, and that teaching strategies class is actually a newer class. We've taught that twice now. Again, our classes we only offer once an academic year. So it's, it's not been offered 4 semesters, it's been offered 2 semesters. So we can pull that then, but we also, each program will have to identify what methods course we want to look at that lesson plan to look for growth over time. And then of course, at the end for their 4th gateway, whenever they become completers at clinical practice.
Giving some wait time.
I was trying to watch and see if anybody's mouth was moving.
So you mentioned that you're hoping to partner with GREC on a couple of things. What is it that you're hoping to take away that will directly impact your pathways in that respect?
Absolutely. So part of our conversations or through the surveys, I should say, the evaluation, the surveys. And again, when we have such close connections, one with a faculty of 3, again, we walk down the hallway, things that we should document, we just have the conversations next door. But one of the things that we've seen that our students need more of is classroom management. And being part of that partnership, we are able to attend like the classroom management, professional development, also incorporating that into the courses that we're teaching so that we have the most up-to-date strategies, not just for classroom management, but for anything. We have great partnerships with our P12 system. So we have been invited, and if we see something that they're offering, they open their doors to us. So I'm not saying that they don't, just saying that this is a little bit more of a structured way so that we know what's coming up, and what GREC is offering as well.
Okay. And one thing I would offer, just as something for you to consider, I understand the nature of kind of the informal small group setting, there are different AI programs that you can turn on that will make kind of minutes of what you've discussed in those small group meetings. And that may be a helpful tool for you guys to kind of have a running list of topics that you have broached that you may not have documented because it wasn't in a less formal setting. And then when you have these recaps, it'll come a little more naturally because it's all there listed for you.
Yes.
And they're pretty intuitive.
And we've started a shared document between the three of us of things that we may have that have popped up, and we're like, and I always say, we got to write this down. So one of my colleagues actually bought me a sign that says, "But did you document it?" So I have that hanging right over my computer.
Something you can use on your phones, and you just turn it on while you're talking. And it's kind of scary and incredible, the detail that you can capture with that. And then you don't have to document it. It's all there, and you can modify how you want it to be presented. And it kind of takes away that need for the shared document because it keeps those live notes going.
Okay. Is it an app?
It's an AI. You can look it up. There's several different versions. But if you look up like AI meeting recaps,
okay,
you'll find a lot of resources that you can use. I'm sure there are others in the group that are using this. I know they use it a great deal at University of Kentucky for a lot of their meetings, and then they'll send out the meeting recap that it has prepared, and people can tweak it to make any adjustments or changes they feel may be needed. But that's kind of over longer, more prolonged and in-depth things than I feel like what you guys are covering in the way you've described it.
Yeah, sometimes they're just real quick conversations, but they're ones that we do need to capture, because it's very easy just to, not literally holler next door, but to say, "Hey, Renee," or she'll say, "Hey, Holland, come look at this," or "What do you think about this?" Very easy to do that. So I don't fight AI. I want to embrace it. So I figure if I can use it in a constructive way, then I will take it.
Can you talk to me about your lesson plan a little bit? Have you made any changes to the lesson plan to speak to standards 1 through 3 in terms of the learner development, learner differences?
Yes. So the lesson plan, like the outline of the lesson plan, we've not changed the format of that. What we are changing is how we instruct students to complete it, along with the evaluation or the rubric that goes along with it. Using the Kentucky framework rubric, we are actually giving the students the examples that go along with that rubric, and not examples of a lesson plan, but of what it would look like in the classroom. I think sometimes we assume they know things, which is very wrong on so many levels. But at the same time, you don't know what you don't know until it actually happens. So what we're changing is the guidance that we're giving students, the amount of feedback that we're giving students. We do have students, and they're probably like everybody else's students, they hear the word lesson plan and they just cringe. But at the same time, we explain this is how you prepare so you don't have to write 10-page lesson plans for the rest of your life. But to give them more feedback, our EDU 255 class, and that was in part of our report, they actually have little people, like it really is like the little plastic people that they are responsible for all semester long. And whenever they write some of their lesson plans, they have to speak to the exceptionality of that little figure that they actually are carrying around. We joke and we always say, well, at least you don't have to carry an egg around to make sure it doesn't break. It's just a little figurine. So it's not necessarily the format of the lesson plan that changed, but it's the guidance that we're giving to start out the lesson plan, but also the feedback along the way, giving more feedback, driving them a little bit more crazy on how much we expect in a lesson plan. Also, not accepting the minimum from students, helping them understand that you really, if you're going to say, give an example, and this is not just of the learner differences, but I guess it could all tie to learner differences to me. But if you say, give an example or work through a problem, well, what's the problem? Our students just want to say, practice problems. Well, what problems? And if you don't have that prepared, it's hard to work through a problem. Or give an example of, well, that's about the time my mind would go blank if they said, if I was, okay, I'm going to work through this problem. Oh, wait a minute, what's my problem? Or which one follows this rule that I've been teaching? So again, it's not the format, it's how we prepare them, our expectations of them, and the support that we give them.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we
Um,
were, go
Sorry,
ahead.
could I ask a
Yeah,
follow-up on the lesson
right
plan
ahead.
or comment? I was looking at the lesson plan itself and also the rubric for it. And when you're really looking at your data and making sure the candidates are improving for each of the Kentucky Teacher Professional Standards or INTAS standards, whichever you want to call them, it is more straightforward when you have a one-to-one match. So in the rubric, you have, for example, one of the ones says standards 1 through 10, which in no way does their reflection cover standards 1 through 10, unless, and you didn't include like a reflection template, unless you literally have them reflect on every single standard. But some of those standards don't really reflect to teaching a lesson. They're more globally about other things, especially the last few standards. So as you're thinking about the lesson plan, since it is central to your assessment system, I would suggest, and you can respond to further thinking about when you have them aligned to the standards, that you're like, this row of the rubric is mapping to standard 1, or it could be the components of the Danielson model, or whatever it is. It will help you know where the students' areas of need and growth are when you start tagging it to several standards, or conversely, you have like standard 6 for several things that are there, or whatever. I think that's tricky. So I would suggest continuing to think about that, and that might mean adding rows to the rubric, subtracting rows from the rubric, or merging rows to the rubric, or just realigning that. I would suggest that. And also, there are other tools out there that you could, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Melissa knows of lots of them around Kentucky, and there are other ones nationally that are aligned to KTPS because it's in task. So all of us are doing that same work. So that would be my suggestion for that ongoing piece. And then you've said that you're keeping the lesson plan the same. I appreciate all the things you're talking about, because we see that also in our candidates, the, pushback on writing this much detail when that's not going to be their real lives and that sort of thing. But perhaps you could engage your partners in thinking about which elements of the lesson plan are really central to the work. So this gets at some of the things around standard. So some of the other standards, if they're engaged in a revision process, and that helps us to think about what the candidate would be ready to do. And one of the things that, okay, to me, if I was sitting around that table and I'm reading your feedback on how do you attend to content knowledge, there's not a strong content emphasis in the lesson. It's not the same as like naming the standards, right? It's something more around like unpacking the key concepts related to that standard. Our Kentucky standards are great at that. If they just go access the standards and read the related insights and the things like that. At least the math ones are the ones I know. We have lots of support for teachers, including what their prior knowledge is and that sort of thing. Anyways, I think you could do a stronger piece in the lesson plan on like learning progressions, that sort of thing. I think that there's an opportunity there. And then this last piece, I'm just going to say, as a person in the STEM professions, the I do, you do, we do as a lesson plan for all lessons, I think is limiting in terms of the standard around using a variety of instructional strategies. So in math and science, we prefer an inquiry model, which is almost the flip of the I do, you do, we do. I do, we do, you do. Yeah, it's the flip, right? They explore something, then they share about it together, and then they synthesize ideas in the end. So I think that the I do, you do, we, whatever that order is highly criticized in math education. That's my domain. So I'll just, but also in science, I understand. So I wonder if you might think about across disciplines and domains, if that's really what you want to have as your all lesson model. It's just a comment from my own disciplinary practices. But there could be a justification for it that your partner schools use that model, so there could be a justification, but I just wanted to insert that little piece as maybe broadening that. And that could be the way to, also bring in some other content knowledge or to address those standards on instructional strategies and formative assessments and things like that.
Thank you.
So there was other comments. Anything else about the lesson plan while we're on the lesson plan? All right, then somebody had started to say something else and I cut them off. That was another piece of feedback.
I was just finishing by saying what we were talking about earlier about when you're writing your narrative. We just got finished with our accreditation process. So when you're writing your narrative and you give those really good examples about what you're like, when I just asked that question about what you're doing in your programs, your narrative was very brief, but you can throw in that example there about their little people or about, what you're talking about, pulling your evidence into your narrative. You gave that evidence and you gave your narrative, but if you tie those two together so that we know exactly where to look in that evidence, that's very helpful so that we can go and look, and then those questions aren't necessary, because that's excellent evidence that you gave, that they carry around their little, I love that. I'm a P5 teacher by trade, so I'm all about things like that. So if you really steep your evidence in your narrative, then the assessors are going to go back. I always tell my students that if you show them, if you lead them by the nose, then they're not going to come and try to look for your stuff. So show us where it is, because those are great examples.
Thank you.
Are there other questions or insights for Ashley?
Can I give one more?
Go for it.
I started at Lindsey Wilson in 2017, and we got we started our CAPE accreditation. There were 3 of us, and we didn't have any money, we didn't have any people, and we didn't have anything. And you're talking about PDs and things like that. So one of the things we do is we offer our students like an hour-long PD session in the afternoons, and we give them. We're experts in our field. We're literacy experts. We're all these. So we give them an hour PD here and there and everywhere else. So I hear you, talking about making partnerships with GREC and everything. That might be an option for you all. I'm just trying to brainstorm things that we do because we're just like you. We're little bitty. We have 70 to 100 candidates in our program, and there are very few of us. And so I'm thinking about, things that might help you. That's what we do. We just offer professional developments based on what our data looks like, what our students need. Hey, classroom management, there's all kinds of stuff on the KDE website that they have trainings that I pull. They have a great classroom management training. I pulled the little cards. I used the little PowerPoint and do the little thing. And then the students have an hour of professional development for their classroom management. And then we're done. So lots of good examples out there. You don't have to reinvent. And then you've got training for your students. So that might be helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't mind to borrow what other people do. We'll take it. In the end, we're all working towards the same goal.
Ashley, do you have questions for us?
No, I don't. I don't think so. Other than next steps for me, I would just kind of assume, which we know what happens when that happens, that Melissa would let me know what I needed to do.
If there's anything
Right.
specific that the committee would like to see in June that you're thinking right now in your head, I think that might be helpful for Ashley to have in her head now and not like, in April. So if there's something that in listening to this, I think like Sue brought up, I'm sure Sue will probably ask about the data collection in the spring, and how that goes and what it looked like and all of that. So I can assume that. But is there anything else that maybe is on your mind that you might want to see or hear about in June that Ashley should keep in the front of her brain?
I'll just jump in. Of course, there's major change happening at the university level, some of which is relevant to accreditation. I mean, the context is relevant, of course, but in terms of the education thing. So I'm anticipating that you'll be able to start moving pretty quickly once that dust settles and you have your 120 hours and you have your courses, that just being able to see like a program and across programs, like what are the core courses and how the assessment system is built, I think will be helpful to see that you're monitoring candidates over time, because I feel like we have this lesson plan thing that's popping into your evidence piece in this response, but how is that positioned and what growth are you looking for and those sort of things. So I anticipate looking at that. And I wonder, this is a comment really to the committee, as I'm listening to what you were sharing, Ashley, I'm thinking, okay, as she's talking about this, that's kind of a connection to standard, 1 or 1.3 or whatever. We might ask, and this is a conversation we don't have to decide on today, but we might ask Ashley in her presentation to do something a little more linear. Okay, you can tell I'm a math person, but like, what's the progress on 1.1? And like Jennifer's saying, we need more detail there. It gives us a chance to almost pause after each one of those and respond and, give feedback or ask questions or, congratulate you on progress made or whatever it is. So that if we see that by standard, that could also help you organize. And I also do want to say, you've got a lot of moving parts. And so like when you're like this one, we haven't done very much on this one, but over here we've done, these 3 things or these 4 things. That's fine, right? We're looking for progress made. So we don't expect every single thing to be moving at a fast pace across all the standards, I would say. So that would be one thing I would look for in June, just off the cuff. Anybody else?
I think too on, you've talked about changes that you're making or that you have made, but what data are you using to drive those changes to make sure the connection's there?
And
What's the
many of
impact?
many of the changes so far have, like at the institutional level, we have to. We have to revise we've revised that. So I agree with Jennifer that hopefully once the university gets their things, we can say, okay, here's our program. And it's not, okay, I have to wait and find out what history classes are approved and what science class. And I need to go talk to this person to see if, they would, support this being a gen ed class that's not in the education discipline. So there is a lot of moving pieces, and when it comes down to funding, everybody knows how that goes. I always say, if I don't ask, you can't tell me no. So I have to I'm going to ask for anything and everything, within reason, So I'm hoping to see more progress. And then once we get some of that, then I feel like I'm going to be able to collect more data to help drive even more of our discussions and eventually any changes that need to happen. But I feel like right now there's a lot of spinning plates, but nothing's on each plate. Like I don't feel like I have everything on the plates, but they're spinning because I got to spin them first, I think.
I would encourage two things with that, Ashley. One, what things are you empowered within the College of Ed to be able to make changes on now? And I think Jennifer Bay Williams is the one that brought up, but really that partnership, having your partners look at your instruments, having them look at your lesson plan template and that sort of thing. And then the other side is, I think, really letting your institution know, because you're on a timeline. So if June they're still deciding stuff and you can't move forward, you're going to start to run out of time before our next visit next spring. And 2 years goes real fast, as anyone who's done this work knows. So, I would those are the two things as the state person that I would highlight.
Right. I mean, the key to accreditation is it gives you leverage to make change and to secure funding to make that change in order to have a high quality program. And so that gives you the leverage to say, hey, if we're going to keep our teacher program, we're required to do whatever is there in a stipulation and then engage the partners and the community TAC and that sort of thing. And how can we do this? What is it going to look like for us? But it's not negotiable that you're doing those things. And so that kind of all right, how are we going to attend to this with our group? That's the power of accreditation to lead to, quality programs. So hopefully it will help you with your securing of funding and engaging partners, to say, look, this is what this says. We have to do this. How are we going to do it? To, what is our evidence going to be and what data are we going to gather, to Coletta's point?
And I know that's overwhelming, and that also gives you some leverage to get some release time if you need it. I've gone several times and said, I can't do this. You're going to have to give me more. And they actually listen. I don't know if you need that or not. But one of the things that I would like for you to think about is with your gateways, as you're building your gateways, think about how you're going to show growth from gateway to gateway. Are the things going to get a little more difficult for students? Are you going to add to those things? Are you going to change those things? Are you going to build on those things? Because that was one of the things that I thought about as I was modifying our gateways from our last accreditation to this accreditation, just because there's so many moving parts and you can't, like you said, you have so many plates in the air and then there are no plates. So things to think about that you can't think about all by yourself because there's just so much, but that are kind of important when you have 3 stages or 3 gateways. How do you show here they're novice or apprentice and they come into the program and then they get ready to move here and they get ready to move here? How are you showing that they're not just doing a beginner lesson plan, the same lesson plan, and then the same lesson plan? Like well, they might get better at the lesson plan, but then how are you challenging them? How are you making them, just things to think about.
Thank you, Ashley. This is sort of last call for wisdom, questions.
Prayers. No shame in my game at a Catholic institution.
Right.
Whatever you pray to, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me.
Well, Ashley, you said it well earlier. We're all in this, to have well-prepared teachers out there. So our committee's job is to make sure our programs are all, meeting standards and are as good as they can be. And then we're here to assist or help. And Melissa and team, right? All the people on this call are here to support that work. So we'll be anxious to hear your updates. But in the meantime, before the updates, if you wish you had a resource or whatever, reach out. Melissa can connect you to folks, or you could reach out to any of us directly.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
We
Y'all
have
have
one
a
more,
great
we have one more
holiday.
business item, which I think this is an open meeting. Am I correct, Melissa? So Ashley, you're welcome to stay.
Correct.
We have one more item on our committee meeting that is,
Uh-oh.
so that Ashley, you're not required to stay.
No, you can jump out if you want to.
It's about a regulation. It depends on what regulation it's about. Is it going to impact my programs? Am I going to have to spin another plate?
Yes. So I'm going to turn things over to Melissa to facilitate that conversation.
Okay, I am actually, so we, AAC is obviously, we report to EPSB. And so one of the things that we were discussing was 16KR 5010 and specifically about accreditation and whether we want to move to requiring a national accreditation, or if there were some things we wanted to change about state-only accreditation. So really, it's just kind of about the processes that we currently have in place and what things that we want to recommend to EPSB. EPSB is the authority, so we could make recommendations and they could say, no, we like the way it is. This is the way it is. We can make recommendations, and from what I understand, we can have kind of a primary recommendation, like if we want to recommend that we move to national accreditation as our primary recommendation, and then also have a backup. So if they do not do the, if they decide not to go with national accreditation, what are the changes that we think need to happen in 5010 in order to better situate state accreditation? So I'm going to just kind of open it up. I'm going to open up actually even greater. I won't be able to see. So Jennifer, I'll have you tell me if someone is raising their hand or something. But I am going to go over to, all right. Jennifer, can you see my open window or?
Yes.
Okay. So
you can see it, but the font is very small. If you can,
let me remember. Oh, here we go.
Also, might you give some context of how this conversation was initiated around moving away from state-only accreditation?
So, yes, state-only accreditation, from what I understand, it has a long history of back and forth. I guess a few years ago, they had wanted to go to national accreditation. The cost has always been an obstacle, but I do think that having a third party, and the other thing was there were some people that felt that CAPE maybe wasn't the best fit for them. In the last few years, things have changed in the sense that AQEP has come in offering, kind of an alternative to CAPE. If CAPE doesn't fit your school or your philosophy or your context, AQEP has come in and they offer a different space for that. And the other thing is most schools have actually moved to a national accreditation. So our office, when it used to be EPSB, had lots of people that were able to I was just making sure. I thought somebody, in case somebody from my office is like, Melissa, you're saying this wrong. But there used to be a lot of people that oversaw these processes. Essentially, for state accreditation, it has fallen to I oversee the accreditation, but I also have to find teams. Our office pays to use the state standard or the CAPE standards for our process. But also I'm finding difficulty with there being teams. A lot of you are serving on national teams for CAPE and for AQEP because, you have to do your part there for them to come work with you. And so since we're down to basically 4 institutions that are doing state only, it is pretty challenging to find people to be on teams. The other thing is the third party aspect of CAPE and AQEP is really a good accountability piece for our institutions. the state teams can be, as everybody has kind of talked about, be a little tricky at times where, there can always be a potential question of bias. And I actually saw that on a national team. So, I mean, it can happen anywhere, but essentially that's kind of, I think, been the ongoing discussion. You all are the body of people, and we don't have to make any decisions today. If there needs to be more time to think through the process or think through this, there is no window. We can put this on the June agenda as well, but it's mainly to start thinking about what do we feel would best serve institutions across the state of Kentucky. So, you kind of have the charge of determining whether the programs are, in compliance and doing what they should. That's why you vote on those. And then accepting national accreditation, but also you're making the decision on the state accreditation. And so, first there's that national piece. The other question that comes in, if we stick with the state accreditation, like I said, there are 4 schools. All 4 of them I've talked to about moving to this. So I don't anticipate there would be a hardship from that perspective. No one has communicated that to me, but we could also, ask further questions. If we keep state only, the other question I think came up in the idea, or section 11, the official state accreditation actions by EPSB. And really it's about the decision making. So if they're given accreditation, it's fine. It gets a little trickier when you go into provisional accreditation with conditions. Right now it's written that if they have any stipulations, you can't do conditions or any unmet standards. So then we move into provisional accreditation with probation. And an institution has 2 years in order to become compliant in the standards that were unmet. So it's, and then at that point, the 2 decisions are either accredit or revoke. And so really we're asking an institution to get into total compliance of unmet standards within 2 years. If they don't, then we either, our options right now are that we accredit them fully, or we deny their accreditation. And then if you go into revocation, a revocation can only happen if they're coming off of probation. So those are kind of some of the pieces, and I hope I didn't cause more confusion, but those were kind of some of the pieces. Right. A lot of this moves away if we go to a national accreditor. A lot of this stuff we don't have to consider changing.
Right. So big picture for today is consideration of whether we want to consider what our recommendation would be in terms of eliminating state accreditation. And if we do advocate for that, then we wait to see how that plays out. And because we're not the ones that would be the decision makers, is that correct, Melissa?
Correct.
If the decision makers decide to keep it, then our committee will make recommendations about how to revise the sections down below.
So when I visited with Cassie, we actually have 2 options. We can recommend that we move to a national accreditation. If we do that, we could also be ready with a second recommendation of what we would want changed if they keep it. So that might be more than we can bite off in our time, a lot of time. Or we could just open the discussion today and not make a recommendation in February. We could, again, I said we could table this to, open the discussion and then have further discussion in June. But otherwise we can do what you said, Jenny. We can take it to EPSB with our first recommendation and then come back as a group, or we can go to EPSB with an either or recommendation. We would like to move to a national. If that can't be done, we would like to change these things. So we have a few different ways we can go about it, and we're not boxed into any specific thing.
So let's start with I think you could take this screen off so we can see each other.
Okay.
Let's start with the conversation. I feel like Melissa has shared some reasons for change to not doing state accreditation. And so what I heard, let me see if I can paraphrase this, is reasons that not to do it is our own capacity to do reviews within the state. The addition of AQUEP as a second national option for accreditation, and that very few institutions in Kentucky are using the state accreditation. So those are compelling reasons. And the reason to keep it, I think you mentioned, Melissa, that there's a cost factor. And is that like a fee that's paid to these national accrediting agencies?
Correct.
Okay. So there's a cost factor. So with those reasons, does anybody have other like for or against reasons to eliminate or keep? Because I think if we sort of capture these reasons, because of these contextual factors, we're recommending blank.
Well, I really like the idea of the national accreditation because I think there's an accountability factor that's really critical, and having that third party impartial, I just think that's so important because I think it's a committee. It's hard for us to serve as a patrol over exactly how much progress is being made, and so I just feel like national would be a better way to ensure teacher quality.
Thank you for saying that, Sue. That's actually a fourth on for eliminating the state review. So from the three that I said, and I didn't write them down. So if we're producing, I think for our committee, what's the most useful is if we put our reasons for the decision. So I don't know, Melissa, if you're taking notes.
And Jenny, I'll take notes. And what I'll do is I will write what our recommendation would be. I would send that to the committee so you guys can review it and edit. And so you would know what was going before the board.
Other comments?
So just a quick question. Would this add, thinking about the smaller institutions that we have done I think I've been on here now for a long time. Would this be a burden for those institutions rather?
I can speak toward that. I'm a smaller institution, and it is not, because CAPE has gone to a virtual meeting, it is not, I want to say our cost is about $4,000, probably a little less per year to be a member. So, I mean, it's doable for us.
And the volume of work is not, it's not putting undue burden on.
Well, you got to do it regardless.
Yeah.
So
fair enough.
Yeah, I will say our state process follows CAPE exactly. So the burden of work would be the same.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So you just have to go to your institution and say, we got to pay this money, so let me have it. And then, and we cut that, she said, do pivot tables. That's what we do. We do ours in Excel, and we have a data manager, and that's what we do. We save money in other places.
Yeah, the on-site visits were much more costly on the institution.
More. I want to say $40,000 because you had to pay for them, and then you had to pay for their food, and you had to, everything.
And AQUEP does do on-site visits. So the year that if someone were to go with AQUEP, they would have to pay for an on-site visit. But I think their yearly costs are less. So you can set aside that money. And and the state is paying for the CAPE standards to be used. They pay CAPE a sum of money. So I just want to reiterate what economic theory of there is no free lunch. So the institutions may not be paying it, but it is being paid for in some way.
They told me one time on a call that they are the gold standard. I just thought that was hilarious.
So it could be helpful in our recommendation if we had what the fees were from the two national organizations, because there's sort of those direct fees, right? What they charge you each year and what they charge you for an accreditation visit, which is every, 7 years or whatever the cycle is. But then there's let's just call them hidden fees, for lack of a better word, which is like Ashley's already, paying for the assessment system, which I'm blanking on the name of it, but I know it well, Watermark, whether she's doing state or national. So some of those fees aren't specific to the national accreditors. It's about being able to document have a portfolio system in place. So what we'd want to do is tease out what the specific fees would be for national accrediting. So just what their direct fees are, I think would be helpful, because the assessment systems that we're purchasing would be, as you said, true, whether it's state or national accreditation.
And AQUEP, I think, does theirs based on the number of students at an institution. So I can see if I can get a sliding scale for that, as well as CAPE. And then, Jenny, would you like me to see what I could, would you like me to reach out to institutions to kind of find out what they would consider their associated costs?
I don't think so, because
Okay.
I think that muddies the waters. I mean, everybody else
that's
can
what I was
respond, but I
thinking.
think
So
it muddies the water because, I mean, goodness, we have we have two people in our accreditation office, accountability office, one primarily doing accreditation and one primarily doing our assessment work. Well, we were going to have that whether we do state or national. And of course, they're working for every accreditation across all the programs that we have. So they're not just our CAPE people. So how would we value them? I just think it gets so messy, and some people will overestimate the cost. Anyways, I just think
So
it's the
just
fees from the national accreditors that
the
you wouldn't
fees from the
pay if
national
you're doing a state thing. Yeah.
So the fees for the national accreditation per year, and then for the year of the visit.
Yes.
Okay. The other thing that you guys can discuss is, you don't have to make it effective immediately. You can make it effective during a certain time. So we can give some runway for institutions to be able to build it into their budget. So we don't have to say, starting in July of 2025, there can be some space to that you can also discuss.
Is there so Sue spoke in favor of eliminating state. I'm also in favor of eliminating state for the reasons that Sue already shared. I see some nodding. So does this committee want to take a vote in support of eliminating state and then prepare our rationale? I'm putting that forth as a question to the group, and I'm seeing some nodding, but I can't see everyone's face. So let me word it this way. I'm going to, I don't know, do I make a motion? I'll make a motion that AAC prepare a letter to EPSB recommending the removal of state accreditation in Kentucky, including our 4 to 5 reasons for making that decision and providing related data. So that's the motion on the table. I'll take a second.
Second.
Do you want to, before you do that, do you want to add any sort of when this would be effective date?
I think that'll come up in the discussion. So the motion is to do it right. Yeah, within a timeline to be determined, to finish my motion.
I'll second, Kesey.
Melissa, do you know, I'm not sure about the bylaws. Is she able to make a motion as the chair?
I believe so.
Okay. Sometimes that's a.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing, Danny.
So
right now it's my motion and Sue seconded it. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, if you want to just be cautious, I would make the same motion.
Okay.
Okay, Danny is making the motion to eliminate state accreditation for a list of reasons that will be shared with EPSB, including a timeline to a transition timeline.
I will second Danny's motion.
Sue is seconding the motion. So discussion.
For a budget standpoint, I mean, 2 years. I mean, budgets are done ahead of time.
So 27, fall of 27?
Right. So, Melissa, are there state accreditation reviews happening in the next 2 years? Because I think
no, all of our state only have actually just gone through in the last 2 years.
right. So this is a great time to make a
Brescia
change. So going forward,
Yeah.
right? Because we wouldn't even see those folks back again for 5 years or so.
Yeah, the only one still, kind of in progress is Brescia. We will do their on-site in spring of 26. So you will make a decision in the summer of 26.
So a timeline could be that the policy is updated with all accreditations. 2027 and beyond will be national accreditations. And Ashley had already mentioned AQUIP. They might already be in transition to a national accreditor at this point. So I think that allows, once this gets passed, all of the state, the remaining state, the 3 state folks will be alerted that they need to affiliate with one of the 2. And I know through KACTE, there are annual trainings. We just had the 2 last month that are recorded, so they can start thinking about where they want to affiliate and that sort of thing. So I think
I can say that I know that all of the state only have had initial conversations with both CAPE and AQUIP. We did that last summer.
so we're already gently kind of moving in this direction, which is a positive.
Do the state, I mean, how would that, would their cycle remain from the state, or once you join, I mean, does it make a difference? Does that
So
make sense?
technically, we award the letter and it's good for 7 years, just like CAPE or AQUIP. AQUIP does have a process where they have an initial process that's good for 5 years. So if an institution opts to do their initial onboarding process, then they would only be good for 5 years, and then it would begin the 7 years after that. But we do stick to the schedule. Even if somebody moves between CAPE and AQUIP, we stick to their schedule unless the institution says they'd like to go up early, which has happened, much to my surprise.
Thank you.
I also want to comment that Kentucky continues to do program review. So
Correct.
Having that pairing of state level program review with a third party outside of Kentucky accrediting agency really is a nice triangulation to be sure that we're, meeting our state regulations while also meeting national standards. This is my wait time. All right, I'm going to call this for a vote. So, Melissa, do you want to do roll call of voting members?
Yes. So, Jenny Bay Williams, you're the first.
I'm a yes for the motion.
Okay, Danny Bradley,
Yes.
Jennifer Neal.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm in my order here. Coletta Parsley,
Yes.
Sue Kesey,
Yes.
Did I miss anyone? I don't think so.
All right, so I'll work with Melissa to craft our letter, and then we'll share it out in like our drive so that you can comment on it, edit it, so it is our collective guidance to EPSB.
And that would be the recommendation will go before EPSB in February. So we'll have to have it in by the end of January. So we have some time. And then in February, if they want to stick with a state-only accreditation process, then in our June meeting, we will get into looking at language that needs to change. But until then, we can stick with this first recommendation.
All right.
Any questions?
Any questions,
No?
or
Okay.
anybody like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Okay, Jennifer made a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
Sue seconds
roll.
it. All in favor, wave.
Yes.
Have a great break, everyone.
Yeah, have a great
Thanks,
break. Thank you
everyone.
for being here for this important discussion about the Brusher program and about our future accreditation. Really important topics. So thank you, everyone.